Hi guys. Okay, so I'm just making another video for you if you need it, just to have help with these documents. All right. So again, this is very similar to before. It's an enduring issues document practice. You're gonna be given documents and you're gonna be given two questions with each document. So what is the main idea and which enduring issue does this document relate to? You'll see I already have my list of enduring issues up. All right, so I can constantly just refer to them. All right, so first document, document one, the title says trade and knowledge. Already a pretty big tip off as to what this document might be talking about. So the document says among the most significant legacies of the Mongols was their concern with trade and their respect for knowledge. From the beginnings of the Mongol Empire, the Mongol Khans fostered trade and sponsored numerous caravans. The very size of the Mongol Empire encouraged the wider dissemination of goods and ideas throughout Eurasia, as merchants and others could now travel from one end of the empire to another with greater security. Okay, so this sentence right here that says the very size of the Mongol Empire encouraged the wider dissemination of goods and ideas. It just means because the Mongol Empire was so big, goods and ideas so could be spread and traded throughout a larger portion of land. So it says, yet as the Mongol Empire and its successors continued to disintegrate, the Pax Mongolica, which was never completely peaceful, collapsed. This led to trade routes becoming insecure once more. In turn, this led to an increase of prices due to tariffs or taxes and the cost of protection. The rise of the Ottoman Empire also impacted Italian merchants conducting business in the Black Sea and Eastern Mediterranean. With these restrictions, Western desire for the luxury goods and spices of the East grew, encouraging an age of exploration. Beginning with Christopher Columbus, Westerners began searching for new routes to China and India, particularly to the court of the Khan, even though a Mongol Khan had not sat on the throne since 1368. Thus, the Mongols indirectly led to European exploration and the intrusion of Europeans into Asia. All right, so what is the main idea of this document? So the title gives it away pretty well, but I also want you guys to use specific details from the document in order to answer this question. Remember to do it in complete sentences as well. Okay, so I just want to remind you that it's always important to read every part of the document. So don't just, bypass the title. That is obviously a key part of this one, and it kind of gives you the answer. So just an example of how important it is to read every part. So then you have what enduring issue does this document relate to? All right. So we know that this document is talking about trade in some form. So when you go over to your list of enduring issues, excuse me, you need to find an enduring issue that could connect to people trading and people exchanging goods and ideas. All right. So over on this list, okay, I would say there's probably three main enduring issues that you could use. I would say the impact of interconnectedness could be a good one. You could use the impact of ideas and beliefs, and you could also use the environmental impact. All right, so I'm not saying you have to choose one of these three. Okay, remember with enduring issues, it's always up to you which one you choose as long as you're able to justify why you chose that one. All right, so I'm just suggesting that these three might be the easiest to use for this document. All right, document two. So there's no title, which isn't a big deal. We can look at the source. So the guy that wrote it, his name is David Walbert, and it's from something called Disease and Catastrophe. Okay, looking at the source down here is just like using a title. Okay, it gives us a pretty good tip off as to what this document might be about. So it says not only smallpox, but measles, tuberculosis, diphtheria, whooping cough, and influenza arrived in the Americas with European conquistadors and colonists. Enslaved Africans brought malaria, yellow fever, and dengue, or breakbone fever, which thrived in the Caribbean and warmer parts of North America. Slave traders, in turn, carried yellow fever back to Europe, and European traders and explorers may have brought home syphilis from the Americas. Nowhere, though, did disease have the devastating impact it did in the New World. This was not the first time that a new disease had been introduced into a human population. In the 1300s, Mongol armies and traders from Central Asia brought the bubonic plague to Europe, and the resulting epidemic, the Black Death, killed one third of the population of Western Europe. But even the Black Death can't compare to the devastation of the indigenous peoples of North and South America. Hit by wave after wave of multiple diseases to which they had utterly no resistance, they died by the millions. Disease spread from the paths of explorers and the sites of colonization like a stain from a drop of ink on a paper towel. Okay, so you have to choose the main idea of this document. So, thinking back to what we just read, okay, and thinking back to what the document is called. Okay, so down here it says, it came from something called disease and catastrophe. The very first sentence starts talking about smallpox, measles, tuberculosis, on and on, okay? And then it wraps up its piece by talking about the Black Death. So knowing that, what do you think the main idea of this document is? Okay, and then knowing that, using those context clues, go over to your list of enduring issues and choose which enduring issue you think might connect to this document. All right, so if it's talking about disease and how disease might be spread, okay, which enduring issue do you think might connect to it the best? All right, again, I would probably go with one of these three, but you can definitely use other ones as well. As long as you can justify your enduring issue, it's not necessarily wrong. All right, document 3. All right, so no title, so you just got to dive right in. Long-term effects. The trade in African slaves brought about the largest forced movement of people in history. It established the basis or reason for black populations in the Caribbean and North and South America. At the same time, it disrupted social and political life in Africa and opened the door for European colonization of the continent. The shift or change in European demand from gold, foodstuffs, and such products to slaves changed the relations among African groups and states. The prices that Africans received for slaves made it more profitable for them to take captives or prisoners from their neighbors than to establish or set up networks for producing and selling other goods. In this way, the slave trade encouraged strong states to raid or attack and steal from weaker states for slaves. As a result, many African societies were torn by organized slave wars and general banditry. Successful slave raiding and trading societies formed new states that were dominated by military groups and constantly at war with their neighbors. So, in short, what this is saying is people realized that slaves were a better source of money than the food and the gold that they had been trading before. So, stronger African countries or states would invade weaker ones and they would literally kidnap other Africans and sell them for money. All right. So, what is the main idea of this document? And then, what enduring issue does this document relate to? I think there's many enduring issues that you guys can choose from. I believe that one of these three might be a good start, but I think that this document can connect to a lot of enduring issues. Document 4A. So with a document like this, you guys, it's always, always, always so important to make sure that you read this beginning chunk and don't just dive in down here, okay? The document is more than just whatever's in this box. All right, so the beginning chunk says, starting in the late 1800s and continuing in the mid 1900s, European nations, the United States, and Japan took over less powerful countries in Africa and Asia. This is called imperialism, sometimes referred to as colonialism. Imperialism is the domination by one country of the political, economic, and/or cultural life of another country or region. Countries or regions controlled by another country are called colonies. The process of dominating another country is called colonization. For example, when the United States was, first inhabited, we were a colony because we were still technically being controlled by England. Okay, that obviously eventually ends, but that was where the colonization comes from. So this guy, Kwame Nkrumah, was the first prime minister and president of Ghana, which is an African country that was colonized by the British until it became independent in 1957. Okay, so when it becomes independent, this is the guy that's the first one in charge. All right. So we look down here and we look at the source, and it says Kwame Nkrumah, Africa must unite. Okay, so this source is coming from the first prime minister and president of Ghana. So the source says they were all rapacious or greedy. Okay, so just a heads up too, when you're reading a document and you see a word like this, okay, and in brackets next to it is another word, the word in the brackets is just a different way of saying it. So you could read it with the word in the bracket if that makes more sense to you. So you can say, they were all greedy. They all subserved the needs of the subject lands to their own demands. They all limited human rights and liberties. They repressed and violated, degraded and oppressed. They took our lands, our lives, our resources, and our dignity. Without exception, they left us nothing but our resentment and later our determination to be free and rise once more to the level of men and women who walk with their heads held high. Okay, so what is the main idea of this document? So this is just giving you background on what colonization and imperialism is. This is giving you background on who this guy is. What is the main idea of this document? What is Kwame Nkrumah saying in this document? Who is they? Who is he referring to as being greedy and taking things on their own? Right? And then knowing that, what enduring issue does this document relate to? So again, you have to go over here and figure out what enduring issue it's relating to. Document 4B. So this one's a little more simplistic. You have a map. The title of the map says the British Empire at its height in 1910. Okay. Down here, the key tells you that the black parts are parts of the British Empire. Okay. So this is Great Britain right here. This little guy right here. That is actually Great Britain where it's located. All of these other black places are places that Great Britain controls at this time. So at its height means this is probably the most land that Great Britain's ever controlled. All right, so what's the main idea of this document and what enduring issue does this document relate to? Document 5. So you have globalization. Globalization is the process by which the world is becoming increasingly interconnected. That's a great keyword to focus on when you're trying to pick out an enduring issue. All right. It's becoming increasingly interconnected as a result of increased trade and cultural exchange. Throughout most of human history, we have become more interconnected through trade and cultural diffusion. But since the mid-1900s, the pace of globalization has increased rapidly. This is because of advancements in communication technology like the cellular phone and the internet, and improvements in shipping technology that have made it faster and less expensive to ship goods long distances. So then they give you a map down here and it shows you McDonald's restaurants around the world. All right, and then it just shows you the growth of the McDonald's. So what is the main idea of this document? All right, so what is this document talking about? What is it showing you? That first sentence defines globalization for you so that you have a good idea of it. All right, and then remember those keywords. So knowing those keywords, what enduring issue do you think that this document might relate to? All right, so you've gone through the 5 documents and you get to your task. All right, so this task says respond in a paragraph of at least 8 to 10 sentences. Remember, these need to be complete sentences. So you need to hit all 3 bullets when you're completing this task. So identify and define an enduring issue. So one enduring issue raised by this set of documents. Okay, so what I would do is I would go back and be like, oh, in document 5, I used whatever. Say you used scarcity. And then you're like, oh, in document 4A, I also used scarcity. And then, oh, in document 1, I also used scarcity. Wow, I used scarcity a lot. Whatever enduring issue that you feel like you used a lot of from the documents, that's the one that I would choose to write your paragraph about. All right. So identify and define an enduring issue. You need to use 3 documents that relate to your enduring issue, and then you need to include relevant outside information. Okay, use the notes that have been given to you, anything else that you might have available to you, and this needs to be at least 8 to 10 sentences. Okay, hopefully this video helps. As always, you guys can message me on Schoology with any questions, and good luck.